that this is a recording in progress. All right, so welcome to Back to School IEP Basics. Miss Amy Van Loo is a former educator who has found her passion in special education patient advocacy. She has a fifth grader named Angelina. She's a SAT B2 parent and is really passionate about helping other parents just like us that, you know, there's not a lot of education that's put out there for parents when they enter the school ages, and how do you even start to tackle an IEP? So with all that said, Amy, I'm gonna let you go ahead and take the lead.
Thanks, Nikki. First of all, I can't see you all on the screen, but I just want to say thank you and welcome. I tried to come up with a PowerPoint that I felt would address most needs, or what I anticipated would be the needs to start this kind of series with, but I felt like once I got through the PowerPoint, we would definitely do a question and answer, and then I feel like that'll give me more information in how we want to proceed moving forward to continue with these series. But first and foremost, I feel like parenting special needs is whack-a-mole. As soon as we feel we accomplish and hit one down, another one pops up. And you know, I have found that especially in this particular journey that we all share, is if we don't find some laughter in this, we're just going to cry a lot, which I still do. But anywho, we can laugh a little. So, you know, when we're talking about the IEP and we're talking about navigating the IEP, it's very important that instead of being the participant in the meeting and in the IEP process, we as the parents become the facilitator in this meeting. And that's really during the conference when I spoke, if you were able to attend it, we talked about really setting a plan in the moment and in the future. And what I'd like to talk tonight about is how do you start that process? And it starts with a focus. And I made the joke about whack-a-mole because a lot of times, and I go through this all the time with my daughter, and especially when she was much younger, I'm like, where do we even start? You know, we have communication issues, you know, all the academic issues we have, you know, just so the therapeutic issues, like where do we really start with this? And you want to look at the area that's impacting your child the most at the moment accessing their education. So every child's different and every point in this journey is different. If I look at my daughter when she was in kindergarten, that's going to be so different than when I look at her now in fifth grade and where I feel my focus is going to be now. So one, never compare you know, try not to compare, you know, to where anybody else is in this journey. It's impossible. And never say, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. It's impossible to know in the moments what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. I have regrets in my daughter's journey. We're just doing the best we can with the knowledge we have. So it's important to really just in this moment, what is the biggest impact in your child thriving at school? And decide on that. What area is it going to be? And then data collection. Schools have a hard time arguing evidence. And, you know, as a teacher, I was always about evidence, right? I gathered the data, you know, to show, and it was to show parents, right? Now I'm on the opposite side. It was to show how much they improved in reading, or, okay, so they're really struggling here. Maybe we want to, you know, evaluate your child, or maybe they need this resource. But schools, and I hope that you guys have a different experience than what I typically find when I'm working with my clients is that schools don't just offer an a la carte menu of here, choose from column A and take all from column B, the world is your oyster. So you really want to start that data collection as soon as possible, as soon as the school starts. I joke a lot because I've already started the data collection on my daughter. School's only been in session officially, I think 6 days. So I've already worked on my focus. I started the data collection. And here are some samples that I have just for some of the clients that I work with. This is a child who physically is graduating from a wheelchair into walking. So we were having troubles getting accurate information to how this child was ambulating throughout the day, and the school is giving us a very difficult time about increased services. So we started data collection on this. And you can see it's broken down by time, a stumble and a trip versus a fall, just the general fatigue, and then how many times he's actually in the wheelchair. We make this very easy for the teachers to use because, one, let's face it, as a former teacher, it's very hard to write narratives. Two, tally marks can easily be translated into data. Well, they are data, but easy to be translated. Here's another one. This is for communication. And a lot of what I hear from my clients that have nonverbal children or semi-verbal children is that they want them to use either their device more or to use verbal output more. So we need to gather this information. And I know in a lot of the districts I work with, and I'm from New Jersey, but I work throughout the states. And this is systemic throughout. They just don't offer you a lot of services in general. And some school districts are really good about giving speech services over 2 sessions or over 3 sessions, but this is really how you get more sessions, right? Start taking the data. Does your child, and it depends whether you're looking at using your device, using sign language, using a verbal output. Are they initiating a need? Are they initiating a want? Initiating communication with peer and communication with a staff. I think a lot of information can be taken from this in itself. Obviously, kids are going to initiate their needs first. And wants, right? I found and by no means am I a speech therapist, so I'm talking outside of my scope. But what I have found in what I do is that the students tend to talk with staff, whether it's with their device or with, verbally, before they talk with peers, because they're just more comfortable with their one-on-one aid or with their peer. And I could be wrong with that. And that's not like a steadfast rule, but it's important to see where the targets need to be. And if the child's not doing any of these, but once a day, why not? Well, maybe they need increased services. Maybe they need modeling. So this one I feel is very important because communication affects all of our children. And we did do something like this for my daughter years ago with her iPad and then with her verbal output. And we still kind of monitor how she is in school. This is just one that we did for a client for toileting. I'm not sure how many people this affects, but it was just indicating the need for it and the different steps. What we actually found out from here was a child did indicate the need for the bathroom. However, It was more of a gross motor issue where the child was having difficulty either pulling down or pulling up the garments, which was then creating him not to want to request help because he knew he was going to get stumbled with that process. So collecting data shows so much information, and that's really the information that you want to go to the team about. And I'm going to just answer one of the questions I know that's going to pop up. Well, how do we present this to the teacher that we want to collect data? So there's many ways to do it, and I'm never going to be one to say lie, but there's a way to say it like, we're really working on things at home, which is always true, right? You're always working at things at home, and we really would like to collect some data for the home team just so we can see what's happening at school and to see what's happening at home, and just so we can both be on the same page. And that typically falls within the realm of what everybody here is doing. If that's not in your realm, then we can talk about other ways you can phrase it. So what do you do after that? Oh, I'm sorry, literacy data collection. So reading is huge. This also is a systemic issue. Okay, a lot of our children are nonverbal, minimal verbal output. So how do we measure that? There are measurements out there for children who are beginning to read, are, pre-primer, or maybe are just working on sight words, or maybe there are some kids that are getting ready to read and are reading. Everybody's at a different age, everybody's at a different development in there, but there are different reading assessments that can be done. I'm going to go into formal ones in a little bit. Informal assessments, for the ones that are either at a kindergarten level or higher of reading, there's running records. For those pre-primers, you have sight word assessments, audiobook comprehension assessments. So with that, there's formal evaluations that can be done for nonverbal children. And we're going to talk a little about evaluations. And I'm going to actually jump forward to that here. So when your child went through an initial evaluation, which they should have had a psychological, an educational, I would assume a speech, OT, possibly a PT, to whatever level the district could do that. Now, at that time, if the school wasn't able to gather the information because they didn't have the right nonverbal testing, as parents, you always have the right to request independent evaluations. So I'm going to use my daughter for an example. My daughter, we started independent evaluations through the school's dollar at age 5 because they just didn't have the know-how. They're called neuropsychological evaluations. They didn't have the particular type of assessments they needed, and they didn't know how, if they had them, they didn't have experience in providing those or executing those evaluations. So you always have the right to request an independent evaluation. Okay. My daughter was nonverbal. She barely used her iPad, but we were able to gather information from that to what might be a more appropriate setting for her, because we were told she should be in one particular classroom and we wanted a different type of classroom. So these neuropsychological evaluations, for us, we weren't so worried about the IQs, the IQ that it would produce, but more so how the neuropsychologist would determine, what are her strengths? Even though they were low themselves, what were her strengths, right? So they were able to do some of the tests that you see here and so many other assessments. With your evaluations, your formal evaluations, we're going to talk to that, how to put a plan in place. So you want to schedule an IEP meeting right away to discuss your focus and how to track that. Now, you can have an IEP meeting as long as there's a legitimate purpose as many times as you need to throughout a year. It does not just have to be at the annual review. I have already had one IEP meeting. I've already amended my daughter's IEP once already. We're only day 6. So you can have a meeting as many times as you feel you need it with legitimate reasons. This would be a legitimate reason. I'm really concerned about X, Y, and Z. Whatever your concerns are, you ask that it's placed in the parent concerns of the IEP. That starts tracking your concerns. And that year after year is in there, and it can provide you evidence later on. Now, your child study team evaluations. I spoke to you about the independent evaluations. By law, and I'm using IDEA, they are required to do a reevaluation at least once every 3 years. Now, the law itself says that it can be done at least once a year, but it cannot occur within a year. So, I make a recommendation often to people who are moving or people who are transitioning from like elementary school to middle school. If your reevaluation doesn't fall at a transitional period, then I would request to have your evaluations done sooner, as long as they don't fall within that year, and then study your evaluations on what you would like to have completed. You can always request the neuropsych, get a full comprehensive picture of your child before they go to middle school, before you transfer from one school district to another. So you have a comprehensive picture of your child before you move. So here, I wanted you guys to have the laws, because I don't know what state everybody is in, but IDEA trumps state law, so whichever one works in your favor, but each state would have these laws as well. So this is just the reevaluations. This talks about the independent evaluation that I was speaking of. And questions and answers. I wanted to make a quick PowerPoint just to go over some general starting up for the school year, because I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions going back in the school year. So I'm gonna just stop sharing for a second. And hi everybody.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we all will be able to do Q&A freely.